welcome to the Lone Screenplay Nominee Podcast, where we discuss and analyze the films that were solely nominated for the writing categories at the Academy Awards. Only this time, we're back in 2025, where we're here to discuss our first episode of the miniseries, The Lone Screenplay Winners. Before I go any further, I want to reintroduce my guest, Nick Zednik, who's taken some of his personal time to be here on the show. And if I'm correct in saying that you also went to Sundance this past week or so, am I correct in saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So I just want to say welcome back, Zeddy, to the show. How are you doing since we last talked?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here. And yes, I did attend virtual Sundance. It was my 5th year doing it. Had a little bit of a smaller schedule this year, and then there were some hiccups, I guess, for the first time virtually. If you've seen the news, so we'll see what they end up doing. As far as allowing the virtual option for Sundance moving forward. But yeah, year 5 was in the books. Saw a few very good movies. One of them, which I think is going to be a hidden gem, A24 picked it up. It is Sorry Baby, Matt. I don't know if you heard about that. That's going to be one to look out for. But yeah, no, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I heard a lot of rave reviews about Sorry was it Sorry Baby? That's the title?
Sorry
Okay,
Baby.
yeah. And it was Adela Romansky and Barry Jenkins, I think, produced it. So that'll be interesting to see what happens with that going forward with festivals and such. But that's for a whole other Oscars. We're still on this Oscars going on with a lot of controversy. People using AI and shit, and we got actors who are surprisingly pieces of shit. But we're not gonna get into that. We're not talking about that this year's Oscars. We're here to talk about what was it, the 2000s Oscars, the 73rd Academy Awards, where we got a lone screenplay winner, which is Almost Famous. So without further ado, we'll get started on the film discussion. As I said, we'll be talking about Almost Famous. It is a spoiler podcast discussion where we'll be rambling on about a movie, hoping that you've seen it. If you haven't, stop the show, watch it, then come back. I'm going to change it up this year, though, with this being a brand new year. I'm going to forego some of the whole production detailed notes for it, unless if I bring it up during review sections from here on out. So yeah, this is sort of like testing of the water, so to speak, kind of episode. So we'll see how things go. But it's pretty much the same basic agenda that we've always done. Do our discussion, and then we'll talk about the awards chances and such. So yeah, that's not much else changed other than that little tiny detail. But other than that, yeah. So we're talking about Almost Famous, which was written and directed by Cameron Crowe. And as far as what the film's premise is, it's about a 15-year-old boy music fan and fledgling journalist goes on a road trip with a popular rock band in the Anything Goes 1970s. So before we begin our discussion, I might as well ask, why is it out of all the lone screenplay winners that, just won an Oscar for the writing category and nothing else, why was it that this film was the one that you wanted to choose? Because I assume you'd seen it before and it really made an impact on you before, right?
Yeah, no, this movie, every time I rewatch it, always has a growing impact on me. Like you said, obviously, Cameron Crowe did it, who also directed one of my favorite movies of all time, Jerry Maguire, obviously.
Gee, I wonder why.
I wonder why, right? Yeah, a massive Tom Cruise fan, in case anyone's confused. So this was one that, it blends that right balance of tone, and that it services itself as this coming of age story, but then it's also really strikes that that familiarity of somebody who would if anybody's ever had a chance to follow an artist, a band, and an actor, and you always hope that they are who you think they are. So I think this story plays that fine line of you want to assume that your idols are going to be who you think they are. But then, when you realize that you spend time with them, they may not actually live up to that standard and that bar that you've sent them. So I think that this movie, while it can play a safe line, it can feel a little bit safe and conventional at times. I do think the overall message of the movie really does hammer home. And I don't want to get too far ahead of it, obviously, because I know we're going to talk about it. But yeah, this one definitely ages very, very well for me, Matt.
Yeah, that is something I actually forgot about it. Yeah, it's that rule that you always have for people following these musicians or even famous people. It's like, you don't want to meet your heroes because they may not become, who they're labeled out to be. Even throughout the film, they're even asking the writer to make them look cool. Don't make them seem like an average sloppy band, sloppy band. Yeah. I can't speak today. Yeah, but as far as me, I had seen this. This is, I think, now my third time I've seen it. I watched it once years ago, and then I watched it again to show my grandmother around the pandemic era when we were watching all these movies. And yeah, so this is my third time I've seen it. I like it overall. I think it's good, but I don't think it holds up quite as well as I remembered. I think for me, one of the few things about it that one of the few aspects of the film I don't think hold up as well as I remembered was I didn't realize like how kind of slow the middle portion of the film is. Like once we do get on the tour, it is very much like a leisurely type film, which is kind of expected, especially of the 70s. That was kind of how it was, where it's like a fun, freestyle rock and roll kind of thing, where it's like people doing drugs, having sex, and not really caring about what was going on in the world. But at the same time, I did wish there was a little bit more momentum going on, but at the same time, it's a little bit like Licorice Pizza, a little bit, where some of that is still, there's still some fun elements in there. Like we already see the character, I believe his name was William Miller, who ends up talking with Russell out on the streets, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of like high school kids that come in and be like, hey, we got a party down the block, do you want to hang out with us and smoke some pot or whatever. And that was like a little fun, like little segment of the film. And one of my favorite edits of the film was when William's on the phone with the band manager, and he's like, yeah, I think Russell took some acid. How will I know when it sets in? And then it cuts to a wide shot of Russell on the house, and he's like, I'm a golden god! And I'm like, that's great. I love that.
He never said it.
I'm sorry?
He never said it.
Yeah, and yeah, he said like, yeah, I never said that. Yeah, but I just thought it was funny, and yeah, like the what I also think works here, going back to the writing, is that it follows that formula of write what you know, and clearly Cameron Crowe, who was he was like a young rock star journalist. He wrote what he knew based off of what he had in his life, and he wrote this script as it was. And it very much shows, it felt very genuine in terms of how these characters were set up, and even how the story comes together. It very much felt like, this came from the heart. This wasn't like a formulaic, like, how do I write, character meets heroes. Let's do like I don't know, whatever the case may be, like of these like simple rock formula type things. But yeah, I was really impressed with that aspect of it, that it wasn't this it wasn't too formulaic, but it still had enough in there that was like, all right, you could still show this to a general audience and they would be able to get enough out of it for a watch, or for their watches, I should say. The other aspect of the film I have to credit Cameron for, and it's funny because this movie was originally a box office bomb at the time. So this movie, it premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival on September 8th in 2000, and then it went straight to theatrical release on the 22nd of that same month. On a budget of $60 million, it only made $47.4 million worldwide. So it was a huge flop at the box office at the time, and yet here we are now it's like, almost 25 years later, which I didn't even realize until the other day that we're about to hit its 25th year anniversary. And now we're getting like this influx of all of these like big musician, movies where we have like Rocket Man, we have A Star Is Born, A Complete Unknown, where there's a lot of these band members or musicians playing their music to a big crowd, and it's being shown and projected on the big screen. And some of them have been like big moneymakers. Even unfortunately, Bohemian Rhapsody, that made almost $1 billion at the box office. And a lot of it was because they wanted to see their favorite icons, people playing these icons, and be like, hey, they're going to rock out and jam out to these solos and whatnot and sing to our favorite songs that we know and love. And I find it funny that, yeah, this is like, this isn't like the first movie to do that sort of thing, so to speak, but it's funny how we've progressed from a movie like this that bombed at the box office to where over 20 years later, Hollywood is still trying to find a way to get back to that sort of era of, again, seeing these musicians play on stage with like a really good sound mix involved. And I find that really fascinating. And it's nothing that there's no way Cameron knew that was ever going to happen while he was making this. But it's just a little note that I realized as I was watching it. I'm like, yeah, that is interesting that we're kind of reverting back to that,
Mm-hmm. Well, no, I think to your credit, so I think the thing with this movie is that it really does almost feel like a time capsule movie, which is kind of how I describe it, meaning that it's absolute to your credit. You look at this movie came out in the year of 2000. We were still very much in that era of like studio blockbuster tentpoles that were offering more thrillers and action and over the top kind of like popcorn style movies, right? So like when a movie like this kind of stands out, it really does make it feel like it's a love letter to his mother, essentially, which you can kind of really see that Cameron Crowe, the way that he kind of like wrote this movie and directed it to honor his mother, the way that and even the relationships that we get in this movie. This is kind of like the way I describe it, is this really is a movie of relationships. It's like, you got the relationship with William and his mother. You got the relationship with William and his sister. You got the relationship with William's sister and their mother, and then it kind of, the movie anchors around this idea of when Penny Lane gets introduced to the movie, then it's like the mystery around Penny Lane and who she really is. And then you have what the whole crux of the entire movie is William trying to get his interview with
Russell.
Oh God, with Russell. That's really the main thing, is that he wants to interview Russell, and I do think, and I'm not gonna jump too far ahead, but I do think the payoff, and when we get to that interview, like chef's kiss. I don't like the way that this movie ends, and the way that we finally get to the build up to that interview was beautiful. But I guess just to go back to your box office, how it bombed too. It's like, am I surprised that a movie like this kind of bombed? I wouldn't say I am, to be honest. Like, as great as I think the movie is, we got to think, like, it was in the year 2000. Gladiator came out that year. I believe I did some research that I think they had a re-release of, I know, Matt. I know, like, they did a re-release of The Exorcist, and that performed really well around the time that Almost Famous came out. So there were some ongoing factors surrounding the actual release of the movie.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into Gladiator in a bit.
I know.
But yeah, no, it's I'm actually reading here right now, like looking through the top 10 list for box office. Mission Impossible 2 was number 1 worldwide. Yeah. Followed by Gladiator, Castaway, What Women Want, Dinosaur, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Meet the Parents, Perfect Storm, X-Men, What Lies Beneath. Like, it's kind of insane.
Right.
And like half of these movies nowadays, it's like they probably wouldn't be box office hits. Like some of them would probably go straight to streaming. Like What Women Want is the type of movie that would go straight to Netflix or to Paramount Plus. Even What Lies Beneath would be a movie that you would watch on Netflix as like this sleazy, trashy type of movie. But because you have Robert Zemeckis making a deal with Paramount, there's a whole deal that they had with like DreamWorks in 20th Century of like, oh, we want to make this and Castaway together, so that way Tom Hanks could lose a lot of the weight for Castaway. So like, all right, well, let's, instead of having the crew do nothing, let's do this other film and shoot it almost like a Hitchcockian thriller almost. And yeah, it's really interesting to see just how that came together, or even just that year as a whole. Yeah, but yeah, anyway, so I did also want to jump back to Almost Famous, though, with the cast. What were your thoughts on the performances, and did any of the actors in your opinion stand out?
Upon my rewatch, I always thought it was Kate Hudson that was like the main standout of the movie, because I feel like they give her arguably the most to do, along with Billy Crudup, arguably, you can say. And then I go back to, like, I think Billy Crudup was the star because he's kind of like the emotional anchor of the entire movie. Now I think it's Frances McDormand, honestly, who I feel like ever since she won her Oscar for Nomadland, it's like the right thing to do is to like shit on her for winning that Oscar. But I think she is really, really good in this movie. Like I think like her conversation that she has with Russell in that one scene where she tells him to, take care of my son. He's a good boy. Like don't compromise him.
Yeah.
And like that's the like it's a scene like that where like she really is just playing a mother, or she's trying to portray a mother in that scene. I don't know if she actually was a mother at that time or if she has children. But I think that she ultimately has with the emotional anchor of the film really is, because she ultimately is at the center of all the relationships in the movie. The way that she um, forms this dynamic with her son. Like she doesn't want to let him go because it's a mother's intuition to not want to let their sons go and experience the world. But then eventually you have to let them. So she carefully lets him, go out and experience the world. She has this rift with her daughter because her daughter wants nothing to do with her. And then by the end of it, they kind of come full circle with an emotional reunion. And then she ultimately is like the conscious, I guess, for Russell, for him to do the right thing, even though I guess he gets directed to doing the right thing in the end. But ultimately, it's like, when Frances McDormand tells Russell, like, I knew there was hope for you all along. Like, because ultimately, like, when he saw the house, he probably knew it's like, I don't think I'm at the right place.
Yeah.
But he still chose to do the right thing. So I thought that was really fitting how it was the mom that was really the at the center of pretty much everything. So I do think that the actor that plays William was great, but I'm gonna actually go upon my rewatch. I think Frances McDormand is the one that stood out to me. I don't know if you felt that way yourself.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, look, I'm not the biggest fan of Nomadland. Like, I just think it's fine, but I do not begrudge that win whatsoever. Like, I still think that is a worthy win that she got for Nomadland. And I thought she was really good in that movie. And quite honestly, it wasn't until that movie that made me realize, Frances McDormand is one of the few actors I could think of where she's able to play a bunch of different characters without having to rely heavily on like this makeup transformation look, or even trying to stay in character for certain roles. I don't know if she is like a method actor, but she doesn't come across that way in some of her performances. Like she doesn't have to do much with herself, just change her hair a little bit and that's it. And she's able to find a way to tap into these characters, because you even see some of her like Coen Brothers work. It's a bit different from each other, from like Burn After Reading to Fargo, to like her small role in Hail Caesar. It's all different. At least I felt it was much different. It still has that quirkiness to it. And she is very good in this too. I thought she was pretty strong in the film, and she works really well with what she's given. She does play that very much like stereotypical like what do you call it? Maternal mother type figure who's very overprotective. But I do like that the film also points out that even though the mother is very overprotective, that she does kind of need to learn to be a bit like, let your son be who he can be, and like let him learn all this stuff in the world. And I think that is something that it is a bit of a cliche for movies to do, that kind of parental, don't be overprotective towards your kids. But at the same time, it's done in a more, it makes sense with this kind of world, because it's very much like the 70s, it was very much experimental, especially with drugs and sex going on. But at the same time, it's like, you just need to let your son experience the world the way it is. Let him learn the lessons that he learns, because he learns heartbreak. He learns, all this shit that goes down in the film, even anger towards the band for, ditching Penny when she ended up having like a drug overdose with Quaaludes, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets pissed at them, and this is the same band that he idolized for years, and it's like, wow, you guys are just real pieces of shits, for doing this. And yeah, it's like, yeah, but I again, yeah, Frances McDormand is really good. I do like Kate Hudson in the film. I thought she was good in the film, even though I don't think she's given as much to do, because I was actually surprised on my rewatch to think to myself, wait, there's not a whole lot of interaction on screen with Kate Hudson and Billy Crudup. And I like the two actors in the film, but there's not a whole lot there. I know there's an extended cut of the movie, which is about, I think, like 30 minutes long or 20 minutes long, so maybe they'll explore some of that angle of it.
Yeah.
But it didn't really come across like, oh, like they spent a whole lot of time on their relationship. Like you kind of got the gist of it. And you're like, okay, we got it. All right, let's move on to other elements of the story. But yeah, as far as like the other actors in the film, Billy Crudup, we already mentioned, is pretty good. I liked who was the actor in the movie? There was the other band member who was the singer.
Is it Jason Lee? The
Jason
one who plays
Lee,
the lead singer? Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of the few roles that actually worked that I liked by him, because I thought he worked pretty well for the film, and yeah, he was pretty good as like the very cocky singer. One line I did like about the film where he says as the group is there, with the t-shirts and such, he's telling the writer, it's not about money or popularity, although some money would be nice. And even there's another line by the Band-Aids, as Penny Lane and her group would say, like one of her buddies says, this is Penny Lane, who says, no more sex, no more exploiting our bodies and our hearts, just blowjobs, and that's it. And I thought, okay, that was pretty funny.
That's pretty great.
Because I keep forgetting, like, Cameron Crowe as a writer can do really good dialogue. Like, yeah, I know we all make fun of him for You Complete Me and, Shut Up, You Had Me at Hello from, Jerry Maguire. But he is really good at creating dialogue that fits naturally within his stories. And he can do pretty good work, and this is another example of, like, his talents showcasing. It showcases his talents, and it was another case of, like, again, him pouring his heart and soul into something that he was actually passionate about. And we got the script that we got. Even some of the character writing I thought was good for what it is. Even again, like going back to that scene I mentioned earlier about Russell and William being invited to that party, and Russell is like shaking his head up and down, and then William is giving this nod of like, don't do it. Don't do it, man. You're gonna regret it. Things like that. And it just little touches like that. That was good. And even also going to the mother character, like after she scolds the Billy Crudup character, and they have this group huddle, and then Russell tells William, like, your mother kind of freaked me out, and he puts his hands on his shoulder, and he's like, she means well. They
go back to that several times, which is great.
Yeah, and even with like the bellhop guy, he's like, your mother's quite a handful. Who's from Modern Family, I think it was. Yep. The guy at the desk. But yeah, that was great. Yeah, and yeah, as far as the kid actor goes, like the guy who's playing the teenager, Patrick Fugit, he's decent. I'm pretty sure this was like his first big role he'd ever gotten. It's his first. Like it. Yeah, it was his first role he ever got. Funny enough, he ended up going on to be in another Cameron Crowe film called We Bought a Zoo, and he was also in, I'm looking at it right now, he was in Gone Girl as one of the officers in the film. He was in First Man and Babylon. So he's had a decent career.
Turned out all right.
yeah, he's fine. I also thought it was funny that Dwight showed up in the movie with the porno mustache, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot he's in this movie. Yeah, I just thought that was funny. I'm looking over. Oh, one of the best scenes of the movie, and it really, again, it showcases Cameron Crowe's writing so well, was the plane scene. That was, for me, like, that's always been the highlight of the movie. Of like, I love how it starts off like a natural interview one by one, and then the others are like, yeah, what happened with you? We were with Bob Dylan, and he was like, it's a long story. And then we start getting turbulence with the plane, and they all, they're all starting to get this, like, what do you call it? They're all having,
like
they're all they're all like, I love you guys. I'm so, and they're all confessing their crimes, right. And then, they're like, oh yeah, I slept with your ex-girlfriend or whatever. Yeah. And then they all get pissed at each other, and then, all of a sudden the drummer, I think it was the drummer, he just says, fuck it, I'm gay. and then as soon as he says that, like, everything turns fine, and the pilot's like, yeah, we're gonna make it all right. And immediately they're all just like dead silent the whole trip, and I thought that was hilarious. Like, just like the build up, it just it was so funny.
Because like you knew it was gonna happen too. Like that was the thing. I don't think like there was any actually fear that like they were gonna ultimately die in the movie. But you're totally right. The comedic perfection of like how that scene played out, where it was just one hammer tone after another, where it was like one thing got worse, like when each band member was revealing something worse, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, we're not gonna die. Okay, well, what do we do now? I mean, it's like, it was almost poetic in a way too. Like when you're on a plane, you always want to feel like you're gonna go out being the highest esteemed person. Then it's like, nope, nope, we'd have gone being like crap people.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and,
Exactly.
and, and, and we put this innocent teenage boy at risk to go along with it. But Matt, I don't want to jump too far ahead because I think now that I'm thinking about performances in the movie, we have to talk about the late great Philip Seymour Hoffman,
I was
who's
just about to bring that up. Yeah.
only in a few scenes in the movie, but wow, like dude, the conversations he has with William in the movie, I'm like, he almost gives away the whole movie like multiple times, where he's like, don't trust him, you're the enemy. It's like there's this whole thing like you're the enemy, not them, because you can ultimately ruin their career, but
Hmm.
they can ruin how you perceive your idols, essentially, right? Because it's like, don't befriend them, don't friend who you're going on the road with. So I think that was really really. I thought his character was so fascinating because he lays it all out there, for you, and then even Russell kind of backs it up where he's like, some of us, we have wives, we have girlfriends, we have kids. These people that we meet on the road, it's like life stays on the road. It's like the life of a rock star is meant to stay on the road. It's not meant to carry over with you. So it's like this idea that the people you deem as idols, it's all this facade that's being put on right now, right? Because at the end of the day, they're trying to get gigs, they're trying to benefit themselves, and it's like, here's this journalist who's trying to make a name for himself, and he can destroy this up and coming band with one article. Like that's all it takes, because he's seeing everything. So that was the fascinating point. But yeah, no, I thought Philip Seymour Hoffman, in the few scenes that he has in his movie, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, he's really good, and yeah, just another great actor that was taken away from us way too soon. But yeah, he's really good in this. He's another part of the movie like McDormand, who was like, you need a really good actor to play that role well, because if you don't, then the film kind of falters a bit, or
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem quite as uh genuine, I should say. Because like yeah, and I do like the line that he gives to like, we're both uncool, we're
Mm-hmm.
not cool people, and
Yep.
it's funny how it contradicts the what is it, cheer up, Charlie type moment from his sister, where it's like, one day you'll be cool, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
not everyone is, honestly.
Right.
um and yeah, even that, it actually does kind of bring, I'll tie it back into later on with the Oscars later, but that whole facade of like, again, you don't want to reveal, what's on the road stays on the road kind of mentality of like, that is kind of how even Hollywood is, where it's like, you don't want to, it's a very like hush hush, kind of situation where it's like, you don't want to reveal all of our secrets because, again, we have families and we got, people looking up to us back home. But yeah, I just, yeah, that's a good point you bring up. And I'm looking through another detail I thought was really nice for the film was at the beginning when they're going through the credits. And by the way, this does have, even though I was criticizing a little bit of the pacing in the middle of the film, I did think the editing at times is decent. And one thing I'm not sure if you noticed on your rewatch, but at the opening when they're showing all the credits, right
Mm-hmm.
as you see the guy, like I think it must have been Cameron Crowe writing out all the names. You see the keys to the plaza. You see the plaza keys at the
Mm-hmm.
very beginning, like a quick shot of it as like a foreshadow of what's to come later in the film. I thought that was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And another moment that I just find it really nice and sweet, I would say, was when we got to the band singing, Tiny Dancer. They're
Tiny
all
Dancer.
singing like in the early hours of the morning. Russell's hungover, and they're all just singing along and just having fun. Like forgetting about all this like chaos, all this, arguments that they've had already at this point in the film, especially with Russell and the Jason Lee character, Jeff, like they had about who's like the main leader on the shirts, so yeah. But yeah, good job for Cameron Crowe. Is there anything else about the movie that you would like to discuss with your notes? Because I think I kind of rattled off most of mine throughout the. I think oh yeah, you know what? Actually, let's tie back into what you were saying earlier about the ending for Almost Famous. So you were mentioning how you really like the ending of where it ends. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more on it?
Yeah, so I think the ending to me is honestly, I think it's one of my favorite all-time movie endings, to be honest, just because I'm a sucker for a great payoff. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, I love when, like, they continuously set up something throughout an entire movie, and then it has this anticlimactic feel to it, where it's like, okay, Russell's at the house, he's gonna make up with William, William's probably gonna give him the interview, but then it's like, honestly, Matt, it's the conviction and how the line is said. Like, it's like this idea that William's like, okay, we're gonna do this right now. Like now we're gonna do our redo. And he asks him the most simple question, but it's the most effective question. It's like, so Russell, what do you like about music, right? And he's just like, well, to begin, everything. And I'm like, boom, and like that's the lasting effect that you have on this movie is like the way that like that interview is built up, and then boom, you get. I feel like that was such a satisfying conclusion, not only to the relationship, but to the movie as a whole, because this whole idea with the movie is that it's this one kid who loves music and wants to follow a band, and then he sees his band unraveling, and then by the end of it, he learns the hard lesson in that it's the hard lessons in life in which, people are going to fight, but they're going to, eventually they may make up. Some people may unfortunately get into precarious situations like a drug overdose. You're probably going to lose your virginity. Some people are going to break up. You might lose a parent along the way. But then it's this idea that, he grows up along the way. So I feel like for him to get that answer, I felt like it was so satisfying, to be honest. I know I use that word, but that to me, that's the one word that comes across where, because then like he learns a lesson that, what? They the band might fight, but they're gonna get back together, and they're gonna go back on the road. And I do love that that's ultimately how the movie ends, like the bus kind of going back on the road, and we'll let it believe that Russell, I guess, is back on that bus. I'm assuming there's like a time jump, and like the band ultimately ends up staying together, and it's like life goes on. So I thought that to me was such a beautiful ending in my book. I don't know how you felt about the ending.
Yeah, it sucked. No, I'm kidding. No.
Yeah, wait, I go all this and be like,
after all this and like, yeah, it sucked. Anyways,
You're wrong.
I really do like the ending, and the nice little touch I like about it, and what makes that ending work is that, again, they've established the relationships of everyone, particularly that of this semi love triangle almost of like Penny, William, and Russell, and how Russell wants to call Penny and make amends, but she's well aware that, like, yeah, Russell, you kind of screwed over this kid, and I think you need to fix that relationship before you even fix ours. I'm not even sure if she even wants that fixed to begin with, because she's like, yeah, I don't really care, it's just like, it's more important you talk with the kid and make up with him, and, call it even, and yeah, and I like the ending. It was really nice, even with, like, Russell saying, yeah, by the way, I called the paper to say every word you said was true. I don't know if what they're gonna do with it. And then we find out during the montage ending, it's like, oh, he's actually, not only are they on the front cover of the magazine, but it also says by William Miller, I think it was. Yeah, William Miller.
Yep.
And I thought that was nice. And you're right, though. It does, and it also does kind of juxtapose a little bit of what happens earlier in the film, like right before they get the T-shirts. William, he becomes fun, and he's like very shy, a bit too, like, oh my god, like I'm in the cool kids kind of phase, and then immediately he's like, he does all these like interview questions, and he's like, when did you become so professional, man? With like all these questions, and at that moment it's like, and again, he's just, as you said, like, it's building up. It's like, all right, when am I gonna get the interview? I have to do it before I get home, and then we get to that ending, and it's like, okay, now we're on even footing ground. We're in an okay place. Let's do it right now, and let me ask you this simple question instead. Just not like two professionals, but two people who know each other and are buddies. And yeah, it's a nice, like you said, it's a nice ending. Yeah, but yeah, outside of that, any other notes or any kind of trivia bits or anything else you wanted to bring up about the movie, whether it's behind the scenes or the film itself?
No, honestly, I always go back to this being like such a conventional approach to like what it's like being a musician and being kind of like following a musician. I just feel like that to me it's always such an emotional impact on me because it's like it's kind of like what we've been saying, honestly, that this show is showing that if you do get a chance to, especially if you are somebody that loves music and you would always have that dream of being able to follow like your favorite band on the road, you always want to hope that they are who you think they are, right? You always want to hope that like they're good people and they do good things, but then it's like I think that while the whole movie kind of plays along this safe fine line of like he didn't obviously Cameron Crowe didn't want to go too far, ahead with the darkness, I guess, so to speak. Even I guess someone almost has a drug overdose in the movie, and that's pretty dark. That's really the darkest thing that we go on in this movie, whereas the rest of it is just showcasing what life is like for these musicians. They're gonna do drugs, they're gonna hook up with women, they're gonna do all these things that you probably didn't think that they did. And I like that even though they're doing those things, they kind of still are good people.
Yeah.
Like obviously, like they have no problem with him hanging out with them, right? Even though he's much younger than them. And I never felt like it was creepy. It was almost like it was like, oh, this kid's our fan. Let's let him hang out with us for a bit, because I do appreciate that, even though it's like, and even Russell, I feel like is probably the most kind of the group, like the most kind-hearted person in the group, meaning that he feel like I think from the second we see him, it's almost like there's a connection formed when he sees William. So I do feel like he's the one that's kind of like pressing this relationship to continue on, where he's almost like maybe we don't need him, but he needs us, sort of like, or maybe it's flipped.
Yeah.
So I do like that, and I do honestly appreciate the journalistic approach that they take in this movie, where it's like they really don't hold back that it's like it's the Rolling Stone, like it's the Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
Like this kid can destroy a career in a blink of an article, or he can make this band feel like they're on top of the world. So I do like that they did set that up, that even though he's young, he still has all the power, because he's a journalist, or he's a journalist trying to be one of the all-time greats. So I did appreciate the way that they didn't hold back, honestly, because this could have just as easily felt like a kid's movie, and I felt like it didn't.
Yeah.
I did feel like there were some risks taken, even though, like I said, it does feel like it plays a safe, fine line. I felt like the way that like they incorporated the Rolling Stone in a following a musician on the road, I felt like was a pretty nice touch. I felt like.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And yeah, when you mean by safe, obviously you mean more like broadly appealing, general audience type mentality.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because
like the band makes up. There's some drugs or some alcohol, but it's not like, there's, other things going on that we find out today that bands do. But there is some there. There is some hidden stuff there. I felt like.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say other than I like the movie overall. I enjoyed it. I'm really glad that I rewatched it for the third time on the show. If nothing else, it was a nice little refresher to be like, hey, a podcast that's mostly known for going through these like obscured Lone Screenplay nominees. Hey, I'm actually finally watching one that actually won an Oscar, or just that, and that's it. Speaking of awards, I think it's time that we jump right into our awards section of the podcast. So, like I said, this was a box office failure, and yet it was nominated for, I'm going to list off all of these, awards credits. So, it was nominated for 4 Golden Globes, winning 2 for Picture in the Comedy Musical category, and Supporting Actress for Kate Hudson. Got 6 BAFTA nominations, winning Original Screenplay and Sound, a Producers Guild of America nomination, a Writers Guild nomination for Original Screenplay, 3 Screen Actors Guild nominations for Cast Ensemble and Supporting Actress for Frances McDormand and Kate Hudson. It won the Comedy Musical category at the American Cinema Editors Eddies Awards. It got a Directors Guild nomination, and it won 2 Critics' Choice Awards for Frances McDormand in Supporting Actress and Original Screenplay. So despite all the precursors and Guild support, it only gained 4 Oscar nominations, and it, as I said, it just won the Original Screenplay category against Gladiator, Aaron Brockovich, Billy Elliot, and the other film was You Can Count on Me. I forgot to write that down on my paper. I was like, wait, shit. Yeah. Anyway, so why do you think it only wins Original Screenplay? And why is it that you think it couldn't get into the Best Picture field?
Well, obviously, I think the key thing is that this was still in the year of 5 for Best Picture. So I'm led to believe that with this being such a strong movie with all the nominations that you listed, if this was a year of 10, I feel like this probably gets in.
Yeah.
Considering it got screenplay and it got multiple acting awards and it got an editing nomination, I feel like if this was a year of 10, it probably does get in Best Picture. I do really love that. I feel like the nominations we got, honestly, were the right ones, if I'm being honest. Like, yeah, I guess Kate Hudson you can go 50-50 on, even though she is kind of like the heart of the movie. She's on the poster of the movie, for God's sake. So of course she's probably gonna get in. I feel like Frances McDormand, that's a good nomination. I have no problem with that. The editing, I feel like we kind of like talked ad nauseum about how good the editing was, if not great. I feel like screenplay, it's probably the strongest thing about the whole movie was that I think it's how tight and how emotionally effective the screenplay is. So I feel like if it was gonna get nominated for anything and it was gonna win an Oscar, I feel like screenplay was the right one ultimately to go along with it. But yeah, if this was a year of 10, I'd have no problem with this getting Best Picture. But I do think screenplay was the right award to give it, if nothing else, and it was the right one to win, I think, if nothing else.
Well, I find it really interesting just looking at this now, which I did not know ahead of time. All of the other nominees were box office hits. Aaron Brockovich, Gladiator, even You Can Count on Me and Billy Elliot were box office hits. Like, Billy Elliot on a budget of like $5 million made over $100 million. That's crazy. And yeah, Aaron Brockovich, $52 million was the budget, made over $250 million. Oh, that's crazy. That's nuts.
That is crazy.
So the fact that Almost Famous won is like, that's kind of a miracle in of itself, because usually they don't. I mean, they do it every so often, but they don't always give a box office failure film an Oscar, unless if the category is that weak or the film itself is just that strong when it resonates with voters. So yeah, I think it also does help too that out of all these films, the only one that was like a director, writer attached to it outside of You Can Count on Me was Almost Famous. And that was like Kenneth Lonergan's first Oscar nomination he got. I'm looking at, let me see. I'm looking through. Yep. Yeah. That was his first Oscar nomination. So weirdly enough, Kenneth Lonergan, he doesn't win, the Oscar, but he wins the Writers Guild, award for original screenplay for You Can Count on Me, which I find really interesting. So he won that, and then he wouldn't get another. He got nominated a couple years later for the Gangs of New York screenplay, and then he finally won his Oscar for Manchester by the Sea. So yeah, I just find that really interesting. And yeah, so yeah, it's cool that Almost Famous won screenplay. So
would it still have been your pick for screenplay, like when you're looking at that category?
Well, from what I've seen, I've only seen 2 of these, so from what I have seen, yeah, because the only other film I'd seen was Gladiator, and man, we got to get into this right now, because I have some shit to say. I rewatched this a couple years ago, and I watched it all the way back in like 2014, 2015 on my first watch, and I thought, yeah, it's not a bad movie. It's kind of good. And then over the years, as I keep rewatching this over and over, I'm like, yeah, this film does not age well at all. And it wasn't until my recent rewatch back in like 2022, 23, I think I told you this, where I saw it over a summer or whenever it was, and I was noticing in the first like 20 minutes or so, and I'm like, oh, you could tell this was a production disaster, where it's like, Because if they actually had the time to write intelligent dialogue, it wouldn't sound so flat and so stale. But because it had a few quotable lines, like, "Are you not entertained? Am I not merciful? What we do in life echoes in eternity." It's like, just because you have a few, cheesy one-liners and very memorable one-liners doesn't make it like a great script. And it's very much like a basic sword and sandals type story. It's not really that interesting of a film. I like some of the crafts are good. Like, I think the sound work itself is interesting. Some of the score by Hans Zimmer is fine. And I think the production design and costumes are pretty good, but I'm just really not the biggest fan of Ridley Scott out there. And I also I gotta ask, did you get a chance to watch the original before you saw the sequel? Because I know you went to that screening for the second film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did get a chance to see Gladiator. I know we watched it before, obviously. Doing this one, I'm kind of in the same boat. I still think it's a great action movie, but I am still very much shocked that it still won Best Picture, and like it was deemed like the movie of the year. And like movies, film is subjective. All the power to people felt like that was movie, but it really was just like a really, I felt like a solid, great action movie with a really great Russell Crowe performance. But it was like, when I'm looking at it holistically, I'm like, it's still a story we've seen before countless times. So it's not like, I would have given that movie original screenplay if it was nominated. But Best Picture is a different story, because like it was in that year of 5, and if it was the movie that ultimately made the most money, and like Russell Crowe was gonna win actor, it almost made sense for it to win, even though we may not have agreed with it.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat as you, and I still think the first movie is far superior than Gladiator 2, and that's somebody that did not very much enjoy Gladiator 2. I felt like it's not even a contest.
Yeah, you don't think it was worthy of a watch just for that lone costume nod?
Considering what everybody thought it was gonna get, no.
Oh my god, I cannot believe so many Oscar pundits, I won't say their names on here, but I cannot believe some of them were actually predicting this to be Ridley Scott's directorial Oscar win. I'm like, you gotta be out of your fucking minds.
Yeah.
Enough about that. I did want to bring up a passage from, I finally got it in the mail just in time, Oscar Wars by Michael Schulman. Great read. I've only gotten through like a couple pages here and there and skimmed through it, but it's a worthy book, I would say. If you have the money for it and you're able to get it, I would highly recommend it. Especially if you're like an Oscar prognosticator, like how did we get the year of Gladiator? So, according to the book, DreamWorks had Gladiator, which critics dismissed as a sword and sandals throwback, but Terry Press, proving that she could win with a big budget popcorn movie as well as an indie style dramedy, took out double. I think the indie dramedy she's talking about it. What Michael's talking about is Almost Famous. I think I could be wrong. Took out double truck ads, billboards, and a Super Bowl spot. DreamWorks rented out a theater in Century City where every night for a week, Russell Crowe and others made appearances. Live Q&As became an awards season staple, condemning actors and directors to a never-ending circuit of explaining themselves. Gladiator won Best Picture against Miramax's Treachley Chocolat. For the first time in the decade, Miramax won none of its 10 nominations, despite Weinstein's procuring Chocolat endorsements from Jesse Jackson and the Anti-Defamation League's Abraham Foxman. So it's pretty interesting, and it goes into more detail about how DreamWorks, back in the mid to late 90s, DreamWorks and Weinstein, they were like battling for the Oscar for Best Picture back and forth. It was almost like a tug and war, where it's like even the year before we got Cider House Rules, which was Weinstein's like big Oscar vehicle, and what does DreamWorks have? American Beauty. So it was like a big tug and war battle, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was really interesting. And much like Oppenheimer and Ben-Hur, what I also find fascinating is that Gladiator ended up sweeping that year through like PG. I think it won like PGA, BAFTA, Critics' Choice, Golden Globe, right? And it won all those categories, much like Oppenheimer did. And yet, it like that film that came out in the summer was a big box office hit, because I think some people at the time were expecting it to be a bomb because of how much of a disaster it was. And Oliver
Yeah.
Reed had died halfway through filming and such. And they're like, all right, we got to fix his scenes a bit. Didn't have a completed script as well, as I should also mention. So I find it fascinating that they went from this, like, potential disaster on DreamWorks' hands to now becoming a juggernaut at the box office. It goes on. It's the most talked about movie of the year, where it's able to catapult itself into an Oscar Best Picture win, literally. And unlike unlike Cillian Murphy, who won, I think, almost every major precursor, Russell Crowe only won the Critics' Choice Award. Like the Golden Globe drama category went to Tom Hanks. Golden Globe comedy went to George Clooney for Oh Brother, Where Art Thou. SAG went their own way and said, fuck it, we're going to give it to Benicio del Toro because he's categorized in lead here for Traffic, which allowed Albert Finney to win for SAG for supporting for Aaron Brockovich. And then BAFTA, they said, screw it, we're going to go our own way and just give it to Jamie Bell for Billy Elliot. It's like, it's such a crazy season. And then Russell Crowe wins, and it's all because the film became like a Best Picture juggernaut, and it had no other above the line, chance at winning anything. Director wasn't going to happen because Ridley Scott was shockingly in third place because Ang Lee had won Golden Globe, Golden Globe, BAFTA, and DGA for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yep.
And then Steven Soderbergh surprised for director when he tied himself with Aaron Brockovich and Traffic at Critics' Choice. And
that's insane.
And Traffic wins SAG Ensemble, and then it's like, holy shit, this could actually, maybe this could like be a Best Picture, potential upsetter because it won everything else it had. It won editing, which, by the way, it's crazy that Traffic managed to win editing without winning both the BAFTA and Editors Guild, which didn't even happen until Dune Part 1, which I predicted, and yeah, it's so nuts to think like all this chaos emerged that year. And even we haven't even talked about supporting actress, which I mentioned what's her name, Hudson. God, oh God, I'm blanking on her name. What the hell? Kate Hudson. She won. She wins the Golden Globe. Critics' Choice goes to Frances McDormand. The Screen Actors Guild goes to Judi Dench, and then BAFTA goes to Julie Walters for Billy Elliot. And you think, oh, well, that means if we're living in the year of Frances McDormand, like the way Nomadland was, Julie Walters wins the Oscar. Nope. They end up giving it to Marcia Gay Harden for Pollock. And I had just seen the movie literally like an hour or two before we started recording. And I'll say this. I talked around with that before I even give my thoughts of the movie. I found out a bit of a reason as to why Pollock managed to get the supporting actress upset. That was a very divided year, like for that category, like surprise, like even more so than the Frances McDormand year, or even the year that Jamie Lee Curtis won for the Oscar. Because at least with those two films, they had a strong enough Best Picture frontrunner. This didn't. Like the only Best Picture nominee, the only Best Picture nominee there was Judi Dench and Chocolat, but that wasn't going to win anything else. It was like, you're not going to win Adapted Screenplay. Juliette Binoche isn't going to win her Oscar because Julia Roberts has that sealed up, signed, sealed, and delivered practically, and Billy Elliot, while it got the director nomination, it wasn't that strong enough to win, to catapult itself into that win. But I think the big factors I learned from the film, based on who I talked with, so as I said, it was an evenly split race. On top of that, Pollock became one of the prime examples of Oscar campaign that relied heavily on screeners, thanks to Sony Pictures Classics. And this year, we'll see what happens with the lead actress race and some other categories, but Sony Pictures Classics has a contender on their hands with I'm Still Here. That could upset somewhere at the Oscars. Maybe it's just a bunch of hoopla. We don't know. But, Sony Pictures Classics should not be underestimated. Especially when, again, The Father. Like, that was such a surprise upset that Hopkins won that with just BAFTA. But when you watch the movie and you put voters down and watch that movie, you know instantly, oh, they're totally going to go for this movie. And Pollock is a movie that I think is fine. It's an okay biopic. I think Ed Harris is kind of hamming it up a bit too much for my standards, but he does have some decent directing going for it, and it is clearly a passion project because I found out that he was given this story by his father, and he'd been sitting on it for about 10 years or so. And he wanted to tell, his father gave him a copy of Pollock's biography, and he started thinking about adapting it, which took him about 10 years to bring into fruition. And then again, Sony Pictures Classics ended up being, they just campaigned it for so hard to where it's like, we're gonna send out all these screeners. And what's even shocking about this is that the only precursor nomination Marcia Gay Harden got throughout the whole thing, outside of winning one critics group, which was, I'm looking at it right now, the New York Film Critics Circle Awards. That's the only major critics groups that she won. She was third place for National Society Film Critics, and she got an Independent Spirit Award nomination. I'm looking through who was even. I'm curious to know who was even. Who was National Society for top 3. So Elaine May for Small Time Crooks was the winner. Frances McDormand got supporting actress runner-up for Almost Famous and Wonder Boys that year. And then, Marcia Gay Harden got Ed Pollock. So, wow. But as far as the performance itself goes, she's good in the movie. It definitely has that capital A acting of sorts. In fact, if you watch her clip if you find a way to watch her Oscar clip online, she has a big outburst moment where she confronts Ed Harris about all the things that he wants, never asks about what she wants in life, and it's a good clip, honestly. And it's
about showy.
Yeah, it's very showy, and she plays the supporting wife character who's based off a real life person, and it's something that the Academy, they do like to give Oscar nominations and even wins to. I mean, we just saw Felicity Jones playing the supporting wife in The Brutalist, and she got nominated, and people are like, there's no way she's going to get nominated for this. I'm like, oh, she's going to get in. Trust me. She has enough juicy bits to get her that nomination. But any thoughts you have about the supporting actress race? Were you surprised or no?
I'm shocked by everything that you read off, but not now that I really think about it, when we judge old Academy, I guess if we're gonna go back like 25 years, versus today's standards, you are right in that now it's all about who's distributing your movie and what kind of standout scene or moments that you have in the movie. This was just shocking to us because you were right. I mean, Almost Famous, while it didn't get a Best Picture nomination, it still got in a screenplay, and it still got 2 nominations in that category. Whereas, you judge something like that today, well, we look at it like now they can get canceled out. Like, the 2 nominees can cancel each other out, or it could just be like one is stronger than the other, and the reason why both people got in for said movie is because the movie was strong. So that was just shocking that, like, out of 2, I'm really shocked that like, even McDormand didn't skyrocket to a win possibly for that, even though when you look at that role, it's like, was that really an Oscar-winning performance by Frances McDormand? I guess that's what we really have to ask ourselves. It's more along the lines of like, how strong was that category? Because Kate Hudson, I feel like that was just a nomination because like she's just, I guess, essentially the star of the movie. So it just felt like, let's nominate her, even though I don't think she really had any chance to win, just because the notion that she would have won for a breakout role like that still is very rare.
Yeah.
So that still stands within the Academy, even at that time. But yeah, I'm just shocked that really Frances McDormand didn't have a higher chance of, I guess, winning in that category. I don't know how you felt about that, but that did shock me.
Well, on a rewatch, it doesn't shock me too much because she's not given a whole lot.
I guess she just has that one or two scenes, I guess.
Yeah, like it's really the writing that helps propel her. Although she is a great actress, like I said, but it's also funny that all of her, except for her Best Picture win for Nomadland, she was able to win all of her Oscars for the lead acting categories. So like Fargo, 3 Billboards, and Nomadland, she was able to win those. So. Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm also looking at here, the PGA nominees were Almost Famous, Billy Elliot, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Aaron Brockovich, and Gladiator, which won the PGA prize. So, yeah. So, like, maybe there was a chance for Julie Walters to win, but, I mean, again, it's like it didn't it didn't translate to much because, again, it was just probably a dead even field, and Sony Pictures Classics were just aggressively campaigning this like really hard. So yeah, I think from here on out, a couple lessons we learned is do not, whenever Sony Pictures Classics has an awards contender, watch out because they may make a splash somewhere, because
maybe in the year of 2025.
Oh yeah. We'll see what happens this year, but yeah. I'm just looking through to see what else there was, to see if there's any other categories. Actually, I'm curious to know what was sound. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at the sound category right now, and I was thinking to myself, well, why was it that whatchamacallit, Almost Famous did make it in for sound, and then I look at the list and I'm like, oh, okay, that's why. And you have Gladiator, which is the winner. You have Castaway, Patriot, Perfect Storm, U571, which all I haven't seen them all, but it sounds and feels to me like those are the types of films that sound mixers would love to nominate, because it's especially when you're mixing in like all this artillery and submarine battles with like U571. Action. It's like a lot of action set pieces. Even with Castaway, which is like, very sound mixing type film. I'm curious to know, what did they nominate? Did they even nominate this for the Guild for sound? I'm curious because I know it got the Almost Famous. I'm looking through.
It does kind of feel like it had like a complete unknown vibes to it, even. Whereas like you would just feel like if it was gonna get one of editing or sound, I feel like it was gonna be one or the other.
Yeah.
Because I guess we weren't in that point where like if it's gonna get in for editing, it's gonna get sound. Like I don't think we were quite. I don't think it was quite there yet. So I guess that really doesn't shock me.
I mean, Gladiator was the one that got into editing and sound.
So it's not like more than one, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, but still, it's interesting. That's how it came down to everything. But I don't really like. I'm trying to even think of any other categories that I would even put the film in. I actually, would you nominated this or give it any kind of other wins? I'm not sure if you answered that question already.
As much as I love the movie, as much as I feel like it's one of the best early 2000s movies, at least for me personally, I just would have loved to have seen it get in Best Picture. Maybe like it winning is a different conversation if it manages to get in.
Yeah.
But I guess I still feel like screenplay is the best award that it possibly could have won. Because I think that it's the strongest thing about the movie is how well written it is. So I guess I'm pretty satisfied with its screenplay win. Because like as much as I love McDormand in the movie, I don't know if that's really a performance that I'd give an Oscar to. I'd love to have seen Philip Seymour Hoffman get in. I guess if I'm gonna pick and choose something, I'd maybe have loved to seen him get in, even though it's such a small role. I still feel like it's very, very effective.
Yeah.
So I think maybe Philip Seymour Hoffman, was thinking in supporting actor, I feel like would have been a cool nomination for the movie.
Yeah.
How about you? Anything?
I mean, of the DreamWorks Paramount films, I would easily prefer this over Gladiator. Easily, like I cannot believe that one picture. Like, ugh.
Someone's gonna have to convince you to do a Patreon episode for that movie.
Well, you know what I find even funny is that this is like one of the few films where like these directors, their film wins picture, they're not on the producing credit, so they lose director, they're not on the producing credit. And then afterwards, from here on out, they put their name on everything, like Norman Jewison and Ridley Scott. And it's like, Ridley Scott, I'm sorry, he is never winning an Oscar. Like he will never. He got lucky. He got lucky the one time with Gladiator, and ever since then, none of his films have ever gotten close to winning picture. Even with The Martian, which only won the Golden Globe musical comedy, it's like you only won that because the Globes put you in that way in that category. So like, I will give you a couple of Golden Globe wins. But yeah, Ridley is never gonna win another Oscar, or actually, he'll never win to begin with. He'll probably get an honorary Oscar, and that's about it. So, but yeah, Philip Seymour Hoffman would have been nice. That's pretty much about it for like other categories, because like these other ones, I'm like, yeah, it kind of makes sense, like why it missed like cinematography, because it's not a very flashy type of movie. It's not even the type of film that the cinematography branch would go for. And director, like I I am convinced that the reason why Cameron Crowe missed out on director, even for what was the film, Jerry Maguire, is because of the fact that he is he's like Aaron Sorkin, like he's known as like a writer first, director second, and he is pretty good at what he does. But I just feel like that, yeah, just like he lost out on more auteur-driven filmmakers. Like Milos Forman got in for The People versus Larry Flint, which is like a previous director nominee who was like a 2-time winner. That's already validated your credits for why you got in over Jerry Maguire. And with this year, it's like Billy Elliot got in for with Stephen Daldry, and that again was like a smash box office hit, and it just kind of made sense as to why that happened. I'm looking through, like the only thing that Billy Elliot got for director, I think what that year was just was BAFTA, and then he got in Stephen Daldry, that is. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting with some of these, and then it's like flash forward to this year where it's like James Mangold managed to get into director only because of how weak the field was, and it's like I really do think that's the reason why. And it's because out of all the director nominees, he was the one that felt like a previous nominee, just not in director because he'd been nominated before for producing Ford v Ferrari and adapted screenplay for Logan. But yeah, I don't really have any other categories left to talk about with Almost Famous. I think it deserved the nominations it got. I definitely would have put it in for picture easily, just because it was, well, like I said, it's the better DreamWorks movie. But again, you have a box office juggernaut that could potentially get into like 12 nominations. Of course, you're gonna front load the shit out of that to Oscar voters. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And it's a sword and sandals epic that's now has this like R-rated grit to it that they've never seen before. Oh yeah, they're gonna fall head over heels for this.
It writes itself.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, no wonder why it won the Best Picture prize. But whatever. That's enough about my shit on Ridley Scott. Check in a couple months when I do Thelma and Louise. No, I'm kidding. No. I actually like that movie. But
that is a good movie.
Yeah. So, anyways, so that's pretty much all I have to say about the awards prognosticator, section of the show, whatever. So before we officially sign off, I'd like to thank you once again, Zeddy, for coming on the show to discuss the film. Is there anything you would like to plug in on where listeners can follow you along?
Yeah, no, of course. First and foremost, thank you always again for having me back on, Matt. It's always a blast just chat with you on the history of, I guess, screenplay cinema. That's always a cool thing to address. I'm on Twitter, all social media, mainly Twitter and Letterboxd at Nick Zednik. You guys can follow my main show that I do, which is called The Vigilante 1939. Just search the name on any podcast that you listen to your podcast on. You'll find the name of that podcast. And my order of business now, Matt, is to try to convince you to talk about Top Gun Maverick for a Patreon episode for your show, even though it didn't win. And it got more than one Oscar nomination. Top Gun Maverick is going to be talked about on your show. I guarantee it. One of these days, it will be talked about.
Yeah, one of these days, I'll think about it. It's definitely something that I'm like, I think we should do something like that. If not on this show, then somewhere down the road we should do something. And do, I don't know. We'll do something about it down the road on some podcasts if it's not this one. But yeah. But yeah, you can follow me and the show through Linktree under @Matthew995, where you can follow along on all my social media accounts, such as Twitter and Letterboxd. On the same side, I provide a link for where you can listen to more episodes of the show. We will be doing more episodes of the Lone Screenplay Winners podcast. I've actually have my next one set up. I won't say what it is yet on the air, but you'll know what it is when we get to it. And if you're interested in being in the hot seat like Zeddy has, let me know, and hopefully we can arrange that happening soon. In the meantime, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and we hope to see you at the movies. Take care, guys.